Another movement that I think is great as a warm up for the hips, a warm up to, especially for deadlifts, and that sounds like that might be your main issue, is the single leg hip hinge, the single leg deadlift. Now you don't need to do it with any weight, but I'll show you a variation with weight that may help. And I'm going to do this in two ways. The first way is going to be controlling and fighting against any rotation, and the second way will be creating that rotation, and both are beneficial. You want to start by resisting rotation, by controlling that rotation and making sure that everything is nice and square like you would want it in a traditional deadlift. And then we work into the rotational version as we build more control and capacity in the traditional version. All right, so I'm going to show you that traditional version that I talked about. We're going to be face on to start, and I'll turn to the side to show you what I mean as well, so you can get a different view. Now the biggest thing is to keep everything pointed forward as you fold forward. We're going to soften that knee. All that means is take it from a locked position into a bent position. Now I want you to think about your hip as a wheel, and we're just going to work around that wheel by flexing at our hips, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to slowly push our hip back as we flex forward into that hip, feel our hamstring load, and then we come back right back up. Now a couple of things that will typically happen is people tend to have this floating leg open up like so, and that can be pretty difficult. So what I want you to think about is your hips as headlights, and you want to keep those pointed right in front of you. Now another thing that can help is to squeeze this glute over here so this leg is nice and stiff and it can't rotate, and try to keep your feet on a track that is parallel to each other. Okay, now I'll show you from the side. Now notice, I soften that knee, and this knee does not move from this position. There's no forward and back shifting, no translation of that knee. Everything is at the hip. So it's going to look like this. Rotate, rotate, rotate to about 90 degrees. Feel a big stretch in the hip, and then come right back up. All right, now throw that in as part of your warm-up, as part of your activation. Try to shoot for about 8 to 12 reps and do 2 to 3 sets at the beginning there, okay? Now if you decide you want to use weight, I'm just going to use a weight plate, but you can use a dumbbell, you can use a kettlebell. Actually, kettlebells are my favorite. I like things that hang off the end of the hand here, add a little instability. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold it in the opposite hand of what's the leg that's going to be planted and working. And what that's going to do is pull everything internally, and the body is going to compensate naturally into external rotation, which is what we want when we're deadlifting, what we want when we're squatting. So it'll look like this. All right. Now notice I am not reaching with this arm. Everything stays nice and square. I've got my shoulder blades packed, my shoulders packed tight, and my arms just hang. They're just hooks that hold on to the weight. Okay, so give that weighted version a try after you've mastered the body weight version, and then check out the next one. This third variation on the hip hinge, we went from traditional to traditional with weight, offset weight, and now we're gonna go into a rotational hip hinge, okay? I love this one once you've mastered the previous two. This is a great one to go into because our body doesn't just work in forward and side to side planes, we also rotate, and this is a great way to teach control over that rotation, okay? So now the most important thing is to realize that we want to build stability through about mid-back into our lower back. We want to lock that in place using our core, and we don't want to move from about here. Think like you've got a metal brace around your midsection, and it doesn't allow movement there. So when rotation happens, it's going to come from the shoulders and the hips, okay? So what it's going to look like is I'm going to squeeze here, and as I go down, I'm going to rotate this hip and rotate my shoulders. I'm going to feel a stretch out here, and I'm going to reach outside that foot, kind of like someone is skating. And as I come back, I'm going to reverse that. Okay, reach outside, rotate, core still tight, boom. All right, now from the side, give you a quick view. Everything looks the same. We get that knee softened, we don't let it move. We lock in, and then rotate shoulders, rotate hip, feel a good stretch, and come right back up. All right, so once you have mastered that traditional and offset weight hip hinge, give this one a try. You can also hold a weight in the opposite hand and work from there. That'll add a little bit of an additional challenge. All right, throw those in at the beginning of your warm-up, 8 to 12 reps, 2 to 3 sets. Make sure that you're feeling your hips and your hamstring working, and you're keeping your core braced throughout.